Mark, you've been a sponsor of the MIT AI conference since 2016, right? It's almost 10 years. Next year will be 10 years. So looking back, what are the biggest surprises, good or bad, in how AI and the community around it has evolved over this last 9 years?
So let me start. Wendy, you were here at the beginning. You and Serena and Vivek and Arjun, and of course Shuja, the founder. It's been an amazing conference over the last 9 or 10 years. Um, so let me put on my Zeta Venture Partners hat. That's my day job. We started in 2013 as the first fund to only invest in AI. And in 2012, $2 billion was invested by venture capitalists in AI. This year, there's already 160 billion the first 3 quarters. So it's 100x that's happened over the last 10 years. And we've evolved from machine learning to deep learning. And over that time, when this conference started, those were getting implemented and we were getting real ROI in businesses. So Domino Data Labs, one of our early companies that is a leader in enterprise ML ops. Forrester clocked them at 540% ROI. Um, we invested in a number of deep learning computer vision companies, one of which, Videa Health in AI native dentistry, 50,000 clinicians now, 500 million x-rays a year, and number 28 on the Inc. 5000 growth chart. What I'm particularly proud of is that the two companies that started that space, and I think Ward, I don't know if Ward is here, but Overjet and Videa Health both started out of MIT. Um, so now, yeah, there you go. So it's hard to remember in that first AI conference that we didn't really have unsupervised or self-supervised learning yet in a big way. We didn't have the transformer paper yet. And so those came out after this conference started. And of course, that led into Gen AI and it just exploded. And I actually think Gen AI, that people talk about it as being, on par with other shifts that have happened, but I think it's an order of magnitude or multiple order of magnitudes more, and I'll tell you why. It's the first time we've been computing in parallel instead of serial. It's the first time that computers don't actually execute the code that's been written. They learn from the models that are created. It's the first time that they're programmed in our language. We don't have to program in theirs. And fundamentally, which I love, it used to be that that we would create, sorry, and the computers would do the QA. And now they create and we do the QA. And now that you're moving to agents, we used to say we had a workflow for humans and where do we put in the AI? Now we say we do a workflow for AI. Where do we put in the humans? So it's been just a fundamental shift. And if we look at where that has gone in ROI, and particularly with agents in areas like software development, code development, Google just interviewed 3,500 executives and their customers, and they calculated a 727% ROI for the use of software. So we're on this trajectory that's just been incredible. And I can go over, if you'd like, some of the positive surprises I've seen, negative surprises I've seen,
That would be
but
great. Yeah, sure.
okay.
Please.
All right, great. So explosive progress in large language models. 80% of companies today are using Gen AI. Um, and more importantly, because of the use of large language models, we've seen an amazing, I call it democratization of AI, which is that individuals now on top of those can build full systems. Small teams can build full systems. You don't need to have the data that a massive company has. So, that is leading to explosion throughout from individuals to large companies. We've seen an interdisciplinary convergence, AI plus a discipline. And in fact, the Nobel Prize last year in chemistry went to AI experts. So you can't be more multidisciplined than that. And that ties in with the idea that we've also gone to AI driven scientific and algorithmic discovery. Um, where we're seeing us go from discovery to design. So, so in terms of a few companies, they're doing full stack. We invested in a company called Bolts that came out of Regina Barzilay's lab at MIT. It is the next generation of AlphaFold, open source, but with binding affinity. So it's the trajectory after AlphaFold, um, and has an API to allow people to basically do designs of proteins that way. We invested in a company called Nabla Bio that was out of George Church's lab at Harvard, also PhDs. They created the first protein language model. So if you think of LLMs that use text to determine the next text in a sequence, they came up with a system that produces the next protein in a molecule. And from that, they can look at millions of variations and then do wet lab experiments afterwards to figure out which ones can actually be targets. What's interesting, by the way, about that is that there was a big advance this last year that was the rise, I call it the rise of reasoning. So in December, the O1 model came out of OpenAI, and others have followed. So instead of fast inference that we're used to seeing, for particularly as consumers for use of systems, the inference loop there has the ability to set parameters. So I can sit there and I can have it iterate with itself before it produces an answer. And this is particularly useful for scientific applications where you're willing to pay a lot of money in that inference loop, but you want to have a really, really good and robust answer. So they ran an inference loop instead of in seconds, they ran it for 2.5 days, a 2.5 day reasoning inference loop to come up with 22 variations of an HIV target. And it was the very first time in history that a drug was found that could actually do that target, done basically by AI. And they just, out of that, got a contract with Takeda that could be $1 billion in revenue to a startup that was announced this week. And then the last one I'll talk about is a company called Periodic Labs that was started also by an MIT alum, Leon Fettis, who was the VP of post-training at OpenAI. They put together a dream team of about 30 people from major companies here, OpenAI, Google, Meta, MIT, Stanford, to be able to do science and material science. So they're using the same thing for that instead of life sciences. But what's interesting there is they'll probably be the first company to not only do the design, but to use agents to actually do the experiments. So they're creating essentially an agentic AI research lab. And I think that's the future that we're going to see as well.
Yeah, and it's come a long way since then. Liam was actually a co-founder of mine way back in the days, and I remember back then no one wanted to invest in AI, and so it's come a long way. By the way, in true MIT fashion, we totally just went straight into content. But I also want to say that Mark holds many different hats, including, of course, MIT alum, but also he is the managing partner for Zeta Ventures, which has been investing in AI way before it was popular, and he is the chair of the MIT Corporation, which is the MIT equivalent of the board. And so, on that note, with your other hat, I'm so curious, how has the role of academia, right, academic research, changed the AI ecosystem over these years? And as universities, including MIT and certainly MIT, continues to lead in AI research and innovation, what do you see as its most important role in shaping the next decade of AI versus industry?
Okay, great. So I don't know if the role has changed, but it's certainly evolved. And a long way from when CSTAL started, those of you who are alumni, how many MIT alumni, by the way, are there here? There we go. Where's Whitney? There's Whitney Espich, who's the CEO of the Alumni Association. There, you've got a lot of friends here. And thank you for coming out. So CSAIL started 62 years ago, but now MIT and academic institutions have moved to the idea of interdisciplinary science. In fact, MIT led that. So the College of Computing started, I think, in 2018 with the idea that machine learning would be at the center of all departments to use. And so now students are bilingual. In other words, they learn machine learning, but they also learn their discipline, and that's one of the goals at MIT. By last count, I think there were 25 centers at MIT that I saw that are doing AI. One obviously beyond CSAIL and the College of Computing, one that's been doing it from the beginning is the Media Lab. I think Jessica Rosenworschel is there. She is. She's the new executive director of the Media Lab. And so they're basically doing life with AI. There's other groups, the Quest for Intelligence, which is doing brain and cognitive science with AI. There's CERC, which is doing ethics, which is philosophy, believe it or not, and the College of Computing with AI. So, on one sense, it's all these different joint centers that have come together to push the concept forward. So, one is that. The other is MIT as a convener. We just created something called the Gen AI Consortium. And that's about 20 companies that have come together with MIT. There was just a symposium on campus, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, that was really terrific, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more that are going on. So one is the other is the convener. I like to say that MIT exploded with the concept of entrepreneurship in the 1990s, and that there's three legs of the stool. There's research, and I think that's one of the fundamental things that MIT does, which is techniques to go beyond and ideas to go beyond where we are today, pushing the parameters beyond what industry would do. In fact, one of the limitations, I think, is large language models today to try to get to general intelligence. One of the systems that came out of MIT was liquid neural nets, a new technique beyond transformers. I think Raman's here speaking later today about liquid AI. So one is research. The other one, teaching, this idea that I talked about of creating bilingual students, which are going to be the next builders and engineers of where we go. And the entrepreneurship is to create the next generation of leading companies, especially tough tech companies. And MIT entrepreneurs, by the way, have started 30,000 companies at this point. It would be the, the 10th largest GDP in the world if you gather their revenues. And in fact, I got to meet a good friend here, Suhas Patil, who was doing entrepreneurship at MIT long before it was in fashion, the founder of Cirrus Logic, another MIT gem. And so I think if you combine all three, teaching, research, and entrepreneurship, that's really where MIT is going. And if you put those three together into new fields, MIT is conquering the world. Quantum, which will solve a lot of our problems today, took on all three, and a number of startups have come out. Fusion, the same for the energy that we need to run these data centers. All three came out there. In fact, now 7 companies have come out of MIT in Fusion. So I think you're going to see all those new areas as well.
Yeah, so I just got the 1 minute warning.
Okay, all
And
right.
so now, we've been doing the MIT AI conference for almost 10 years now, 10 years next year. But of course, the computer science and artificial intelligence at MIT has been around for multiple decades. Based on what you see now, if you were to predict, right, in 1 minute,
Okay.
what do you expect the state of AI to be in another 10 years from now?
Okay. So I think enterprise AI, the core infrastructure is good. The core infrastructure of all companies is going to be based on AI. I think there's going to be agent networks where they basically go and do their thing, and you don't have to get involved with that. There's going to be a lot of specialized vertical dynamic models, hybrid models, basically, because these large language models, I think, are good for some things, but smaller, more vertical models are also very good. I think we're going to see massive acceleration of scientific discovery in the next 10 years, as we talked about. And by the way, I was at a talk on campus last week by Ray Kurzweil, who came back, and he talked about this idea of brain AI fusion, which is the idea that I think in 10 years, it won't be us versus AIs, but AIs will basically be fused with us, and you can just think, and you'll be able to have access to everything that these models have today. So I think that's also on the horizon.
Well, lots to look forward to and to think about in combination with all the other disciplines like ethics and all those other things. How exciting. Thank you so much, Mark,
Thank
for
you.
everything that you do. And happy MIT AI conference.